Quick demo of this video series. With this video, we have started a new video series on building complete Angular material application with practical examples. In upcoming series of videos, we will learn how to use Angular 6 material. We will have discussion on form design, CRUD operations, pop-up dialog, data table with paging, sorting and filtering, and much more. In this video, we will design the Angular material form for CRUD operations containing almost all important controls like input text box, drop-down list, radio button, checkbox, date picker, etc. So please watch till the end of this video series. What's up YouTube? Welcome to CodAffection. With this video, we have started a new series on building complete Angular material application. In this video, we will design the form for CRUD operation. Inside the form, we will have the most frequently used CRUD components like text box, drop-down list, radio button, checkbox, and date picker. In the next video, we will implement the actual CRUD operation with Firebase. In following tutorials, we will discuss Angular material, data table, pop-up window, and much more with practical example. As you know, Angular material is a package or tool for Angular developers. It contains high-quality UI components from Google Material Design. So here we have the official website for Angular material, material.angular.io, and here we have the website for Google Material Design. In last few months, Google updated their products with Material Design. For example, here we have the new interface for Gmail. And this new interface is much better and impressive than the old one. So I hope this is an inspiration for new Angular material developers. So let's get started with our project. First of all, let's open the folder where we want to create the project. So here is the folder and select the folder. Inside this folder, we have to create a new Angular 6 project. For that, I will use the integrated terminal from this IDE. Click on terminal here. You can use this Angular CLI command, ng new, then application name. I will name this application as complete Angular material app. Hit enter. So here we have successfully created the Angular 6 project. Here you can see the new folder with project name complete Angular material app. Now we have to install Angular material and related packages. So first of all, we have to navigate inside the project folder here. Now we have the npm command, npm install, then --save. In short, we can do this --yes. First of all, we have the main package, Angular material, and then we have Angular CDK. In order to work with animations, we have to install this package, Angular animations. Hit enter. So here we have installed the Angular material and related packages in Angular 6 application. All of these instructions are given in the official guides here under getting started. So here we have the commands, npm commands for installing required packages. Finally, we have to use a theme from Angular material. So here we have the pre-built themes from Angular. So we will be using this second theme here, indigo pink.css. Now we have to include the corresponding CSS in our project. So open styles.css here. And then we have to add the import statement for the style sheet. Along with this theme style sheet, we have to add a style sheet reference for material icons that you can see here. Just search for material icons. So these are the available icons. In order to use these icons, we have to use this style sheet reference here. Under this tab 6, you can see this reference. Just copy this. Then back to the project, open index.html page. Just above this head end tag, we can add this style sheet reference. Now in order to show you the application structure that we want to build in this part, I'm going to create a new text file. So click on this new file here I will name this file as application structure. Inside that I will paste this structure. So in this application we have to create two components, employees and employee. So with this series of tutorials we will discuss topics related to Angular material based on the employee register application. We will deal with details of employee like full name, mobile, email, department, then gender, etc. So first of all we have to create two components, employees and employee, and inside the shared folder we have the employee service class. So first of all we have to create the components. So currently we are inside the project folder. In order to create a new component you can do this ng g for generate c4 component. First of all we have the employees parent component. So here we have created the parent component employees. From application structure it is clear that we have this parent component employees. Inside that we have the child component employee. We can use the same previous command with some modifications. In order to see the previous command, just hit up arrow and we have to create the component inside the folder employees. Then component name will be employee. Hit enter. So here we have created the child component employee. Now we have to create one service class inside this shared folder. So we can use this command ng g for generate s for service. We have to create the service class inside the folder shared, which is not created, but when we execute this command, if there is no folder with shared name, it will be created along with the creation of service class. We have to create the service class with name employee service. So we just need to type employee here. Hit enter. So that's it. Here we have the shared folder. Inside that we have the service class. Along with this TypeScript file, which is the file with extension ts, we have another file with extension spec.ts, which is for test purpose. We are not going to test this application, so let me remove this file. Now enough with the creation, we have to run this application. For that I will open a fresh terminal, click on this plus button here, navigate inside the project folder. Then you can use this command ng serve :open. In short, you can just type O. Hit enter. It will build and open the application in your default web browser. So this is how the fresh Angular 6 application looks like. Now we can start designing our application. So inside this default component HTML, app component HTML, we want to show the parent component employees. This one, employees. So for that we can use the component selector, which is here inside the component TypeScript file app-employees. Now let me copy this and paste inside this HTML here. Now we have to create a tag with this selector. Okay. Now inside the employees component HTML, I want to show a top toolbar containing application header. Instead of this default paragraph, we need a div with class container. So here we have the div with class container. Inside this div we can show the toolbar from Angular material. So here we have the corresponding tag mat-toolbar. For each Angular material component we will have this prefix for each component mat. Now in order to understand how to use Angular material components, here you can see the official documentation. Just go to these components here, and inside this navigations you can see toolbar here. For each Angular material component description we have three tabs: overview, API and examples. Inside the overview tab we will have the basic usage of the component. Below that we will have the various configurations for the component. Inside this API tab, first of all we will have the import statement related to the component module. Below that we will have the in-depth details like directives, properties related to this module. And inside this last tab, examples, we will have the various usage of the component. So for this mat toolbar component here, we have to import this module, mat toolbar module, that we can do in a bit. Before that, inside this mat toolbar, we need to show a span. Inside that, we will have the application name. I will name this application as Angular 6 material. Before and after this span, I will add one span like this. Both of them have this class fill remaining space, so that we can position this span in the center. Now we have to define this CSS class inside the default style sheet, which is styles.css here. First of all, we have the div container. Inside that, we have modified the margin, and we have defined this class fill remaining space with flex modification. Now back to the component HTML here. As we have seen inside this documentation, in order to use toolbar, we have to import this module, mat toolbar module. Like this, for any Angular material component, we have to import corresponding module inside our project. Whether it is input element or button or drop down. Normally we will import the module inside the default module file app.module.ts. If we add modules for each Angular material component, this file becomes messy. So in order to handle this problem, I will create an extra module here. So just click on this plus button here. In order to create a new module, you can use this Angular CLI command g for generate m4 module. I will name this module as material. First of all, we have to navigate inside the project folder, then run the command. So here we have successfully created the module material here. Inside that, we have the module TypeScript file. First of all, I will add an import statement for Angular material. Unlike other import statements, in order to reduce the number of import statements here, with this single line, we have imported all modules from Angular material with this alias material. Now from this Angular material, we have to import this class here, mat toolbar module. Let me copy this. Then we have to import this from material dot mat toolbar module. Now along with this imports array, we need exports array also. So here it is, exports. Inside that, we have to add the same module. Let me copy this and pasting inside this. Now we have to import this new module, material module, inside this default module class app.module.ts. So first of all, we have the import statement here. Now we need to add this material module inside this imports array here. Now let me save all of these modifications here, then back to the application. So here we have the toolbar. Just below this toolbar, we need to show the HTML from employee component, which is the child component for employees. So we have to modify this component HTML. Inside this component HTML, we will design the Angular material form using reactive form approach or model driven approach. For that, first of all, we will define the form group inside the service class here. For reactive forms approach, we have to import these classes form group and form control from Angular forms. Now we can define a property of the type form group. So here we have the form, it is of the type form group class. And it is initialized with this constructor of form group. Inside that, we have to provide an object containing form controls. So here we have the first form control, which is equal to $key is equal to new form control, and here we have the default value, which is null. $key property is used as the primary key or unique identifier to identify each employee record from the collection. You will understand this record once we submit this form for inserting new employees. After this property, we have another control for full name, which is equal to new form control, and we have the default value as empty string. Then we have email, then mobile, then we have city, and here we have gender. For gender, we will have a radio button control. After that we have department. For department we will have a select, control or drop down list. Then we have hire date, it will be a date picker. Finally we have this is permanent control, it will be a checkbox to identify whether a user is permanent or not. By default it will be false. Now in order to use this form group property in other component classes, we have to inject this in app.module.ts file. So back to app.module.ts file. First let's add the import statement for employee service class. Now we have to add this employee service class inside this providers array here. Now using this form group property, we have to design the form inside the component employee.component.html. For that, first of all, we have to create an object of this employee service class inside the corresponding TypeScript file employee component.ts file. So here we have the same import statement for employee service. Now we have to create an object of the employee service inside the constructor, which is here service is of the type employee service class. Instead of this default paragraph, I will add a form element. So here we have the form element and we are going to design this form using the service class property form, which is of the type form group. For that we can add this attribute form group, which is equal to service.form. In order to work this reactive form approach or model driven approach, we have to import the reactive forms module inside app.module.ts file here. So here it is, import reactive forms module from Angular forms. Now we have to add the same class inside this imports array here. Now back to the component HTML. I'm going to add a custom class for this form here, which is normal form. I will define this class inside the styles.css with updated margin. Now inside this form, we are going to divide the form into two grid columns. Corresponding documentation can be seen here. Go to components, then layout. Here we have grid list. So for this particular form here, we need two columns with one row. You can see the basic usage of the component here. For this, we have to import this module, mat grid list module. So we can do that inside the new module here, material. Just add the module mat grid list module inside imports array and the exports array. Then back to the component HTML. Here we have the grid list component. It has two columns. Since we have one row, we don't need to specify number of rows. We will specify the row height as 300 pixels. Inside this, we need two columns. So here we have two mat grid tile. We will start with the first column. Inside that, I will add a div with class controllers container. Now we will define the class inside the styles.css here. For the class, we will set the width as 100% and we will have a 5% padding. Inside this div, here we have the first control, which is input element. It's of the type hidden, and here we have the form control name, which is equal to $key. That means here we have created a component for this $key, which is the primary key for the employee. Okay, so that is why we have hidden this property here. Now just below this hidden field, we just need to create a text box for full name. For that, first of all, we will add this mat form field, generally which is used to enclose more than one Angular material. For now, here we have the input element and we will set the form control name as full name. In order to convert this normal input element into a mat input, we have to add this directive mat input here. After that, we will set the placeholder as full name. Mat input documentation is given here under form controls. You can see this input. So for any input text box, we have to add this directive mat input. You can see various examples here with prefix and suffix. You can check them later. For full name, we need a normal text box. In upcoming tutorials, we will discuss input with prefix or suffix elements like this. So for this component we have to import this class here, mat input module, and for this form field here we have to import this. Here you can see the API mat form field module. So let's import these two module classes inside this material module. So here we have field module and input module. We have to add the same inside the exports array also. Now back to the component HTML. Currently inside this form field we have a single input control. Later we will have more controls when we implement validations. Like this full name, we need to add form field and input controls for remaining properties. So here we have the control for email, then mobile and city. Now let's look how the form looks with these controls. For that, open parent component HTML, which is here employees component HTML. Just below the toolbar we need to show the HTML from the child component. So here we have to add the child component selector app-employee. Now let me save all of these modifications here, then back to the application. So here we have the 4 input controls inside the first grid column. Here we have aligned each control in horizontal. Instead of that, I want to show them in vertical order, so that one control per one line. For that we can add the styles here. Inside the div, all of the component width will be set to 100%. Okay, now let me save this, then back to the application. Oh boy, here we have another problem. Only 2 controls are listed. Let me check the inspect. So it is related to browser animation module, I think. So we have to add the corresponding module in app-module.ts file. So here we have the corresponding import statement, browser animation module from platform browser animations. Now we have to add the same inside the imports array. Let me save this, back to the application. Now let's add remaining controls inside the second column in grid. So here we have the second grid column. Inside that we will have the same div that we have added here, div with class controllers container. First of all, I will add radio button for selecting gender. For that, first of all, I will add a div with class add bottom padding. This bottom padding is required for the proper alignment of controls like radio button and checkbox. So here we have to define the class with padding 10 pixel. Inside the div we will have the radio button. Before that, let's look the documentation. Here we have the form controls. Inside that we have radio button. So this is how it looks. Okay, so in order to work with this we have to import this module. So open the material module in our project. We can add the module like this. Then back to the component HTML, we can do this. We will have this mat radio group and we will set the form control name to gender. Inside that we need 3 radio buttons. Okay, one for male and corresponding value will be 1, then female, and for other types of gender value will be 3. Now if you save this, you can see the newly updated radio buttons for male, female and others. When we see them, it looks stick to each other. So we have to separate them. For that, we will define this style here. This is particularly for the radio button. We will add the margin left as 5 pixel. Now let me save this, back to the application. Now it's almost fine. If you are not happy, you can increase the margin. Now let's look how to add drop down list or select control in Angular material. So let's have a look at the documentation here. Here we have the select control. So this is how the default control look like. You can see various modifications here. Basically for this control we have to import this mat select module. So corresponding module will be mat select module. Let's add them in imports and exports array. Back to the HTML. Now let's add a form field for select control. Inside that we have the match select control, and then we will set the form control name as department, which is already defined in Angular material form group, and here we have the placeholder as department. Now inside this control, here we have the first default option, which is none. For options we have to use this match option tag. For now I will show the remaining options from a static array. In the next video we will convert this into a dynamic drop down list. So first of all we have to define the static array in the corresponding TypeScript file. Departments, it contains 3 options for department 1, department 2 and department 3. Now back to the component HTML, we have to iterate through this static array here. So I will add the ng container, and here we have the ng4 directive, and we will iterate through this static array with this department variable. So here we have the option mat option. I will set the value with this string interpolation department.id, and here we have the value department.value. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Boom, that's it. Department 1, department 2 and so on. Now we have 2 more controls like this. We have to add date picker for selecting hire date for the employee. How we can add date picker in Angular material? Let's have a look in our documentation. Under this form controls you can see the date picker. Here we have the basic usage of the date picker. You can see some variations also here. Okay. As per the documentation, you can see that we have to import this mat date picker module. But in practical, along with this module, we have to import the dependent module native date module. So let's look how to work with this date picker. First of all, we have the form field, and here we have the input control, and we will set the form control as hire date, and here we have the mat input. That means this is a normal text box, and here we have the mat date picker, which is equal to picker. Then placeholder will be hire date. After that we have a toggle, that means which is responsible for this toggle here, this one. Okay, not this calendar, just this picker. So we have added that toggle as a suffix, and here we have the for attribute picker. So this is how we connect these 2 controls. After that we have this mat date picker, which is responsible for this calendar here. Okay. Now before showing this date picker in our form, let me add a checkbox to identify whether a user is permanent or not. You can see the checkbox documentation here. Checkbox, we have to import this module mat checkbox module. Here you can see the basic usage, and here we have some examples with some various applications. So back to the project. Inside the material module we have to add this module mat checkbox module in both of the arrays. Then back to the component HTML. First of all we have a div with class add bottom padding, which is already added here. Then inside that we have the control mat checkbox form control name is equal to is permanent. So here we have done with input form controls. Let me save this. Back to the application here. Something went wrong. What's happening? Let me check the inspect. Yes, we forgot to import modules related to date picker. So here it is. Date picker module, which is already defined in our documentation, but this is another dependent module. So do not forget this dependent module. Let me copy these 2 modules, then pasting inside the exports array here. Save. Back to the application. Here we have the hire date, and here we have the checkbox. Now what do we do with these controls? We need a submit button, right? So we can do that here. We'll add another div here with class button draw, and inside that we have one button for submit, and you can see the details of button in as per the documentation here. Under buttons, click on button here. Here we have the default button. For various types of UI interface, you can see here basic button, raised button, so and so. Color is set as primary, type will be submit, and text will be submit. After the submit button, we need a clear button. So here it is. So in order to work this button, we have to import this corresponding module, mat button module. So open material module, and we will add the button module here and here. Let me save all of these modifications. Back to the application here. Of course, they will stick to each other unless we add a margin like we have done for this radio button. Let's open styles.css, then here it is. Let me save this. Back to the application. So everything is fine now. Here we completed with form design. So this is how we can design forms in Angular material with form group. Now let's look how we can implement validations inside this form. That means Angular material validation. For that, first of all, we have to update the form group that we have defined inside the service class here. In order to work with validations, we have to import this new class validator from Angular forms. Now I want to make this full name and mobile as a mandatory field so that we can pass through the constructor second parameter. So we will set this full name and this mobile as a required field. And for this email control, we have to verify the correct format of email. For that, we can add this validation here, validators.email. For this mobile text box, we need one more validation, which is mil length. So we can specify the validation like this, validators.mil length. It should at least contain 8 numbers. With that, we have defined validations inside this form group property here. Now we have to show validation indications or error messages in our HTML file, which is here employee.component.html. Since we have made this full name and mobile as a required or mandatory field, it is a best practice to add this asterisk mark for these two controls here. I will add this suffix with asterisk mark for both of these controls here so that user can easily identify this is a required field. Now in order to show the validation error about this control full name, we can do this. Mat error directive can be used. Inside that, we will show this message, this field is mandatory. This mat error directive is already defined inside this module here, form field module, that you can see in our documentation. Here we are inside the form field. Here you can see the first directive, mat error, single error message to be shown underneath the form field. Okay, like this we have to show error messages for this email and mobile. For email, we need to show the error message when we have an invalid email inside the text box. So we can do this. Invalid email address will be shown when there is an error due to email text box. Now for this mobile control, we have multiple validations. We have required validation and mil length. So let's look how we can show different error messages for different types of validations. For that, we will use the mat error directive with ngIf. So we can do this. We will show the error message, this field is mandatory when this condition becomes true. It checks whether we have any error or not. If we have any error and which is related to required, then we will show this error message. Otherwise, we will show this message, minimum 8 characters need when this condition satisfies. Now finally, I want to disable the form submit button when this form as a whole is not valid. So we can add this disabled attribute based on this condition here. We will add this disabled when this condition satisfies. That means the form as a whole is not valid. Let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Initially this submit button is disabled, that means this form is not valid. You can see here full name and mobile are mandatory. Validation error message will show only when we leave that control as empty. Now you can see the error message, this field is mandatory. Now let's do the same with mobile. It is mandatory. Now if we enter some digits inside that, we have another validation, minimum 8 characters needed. So here it is. Finally, this form as a whole is valid. So here you can see that the submit button becomes enabled. Email is not mandatory, but if we enter something inside that, it should be in proper email format. Otherwise, we will have this validation error message, invalid email address. If you complete with a valid email, now this form as a whole is valid, and thereby we have enabled this submit button. So this is how to implement validations inside Angular forms. Now let's look how to clear these controls using this clear button here. Okay. For that, I will wire up a click event for this clear button. Now we have to define this onClear function inside the corresponding TypeScript file here. So here we have the onClear function. Inside that, first of all, we will clear the form group by calling this function here, reset function, from this form group property. When we call this reset function, all of the control value will become null. So we have to initialize the form controls to their initial default values. For that, I will define another function in our service class. It will be initialize form group. Now we have to define this function inside the service class here. It is as simple as this. Here we have the function initialize form group. In order to change the values of these form controls from this form group, we can call this set value function. Inside that, we will have another object containing default values of these controls here. Okay. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application. Let's look how this clear button works. Click on clear. In this part, we have completed with designing CRUD form using Angular material form group. You can find the GitHub link in video description. In the next video, we will submit this Angular form for Firebase CRUD operations, and we will show the notification message using Angular material. In following tutorials, we will list those inserted records in Angular data table with paging, filtering, and searching. And then we will discuss pop-up window in Angular material and much more. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video, and for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to CodAffection. Please like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.